Are we on?
Yes, we're on. Good evening, Betzalel, Andrew, and Yehuda Stern, and all the new people here. Shalom Aleichem, as I see if you go back. We actually are holding by Ace, the top bottom of Chesed base. I just want to tell you like this, that years ago I was teaching the Sebeach, and I had this person who said to me that he wants to become from, he wants to learn Torah, but only if learn from Nachman Bestov's Torah. Now, nowadays, I probably wouldn't have the energy for it. In those days, I was more enthusiastic about these things. So we learned Kedush Moran and things like that. And actually, it's very interesting Torah. Kutim Moran. And one of the things he says, it's always stuck by me, is beautiful words. So this week's parasha it says, Isha Yori V'rach Alevo. Somebody who's scared. So Rashi, what's Rashi say? Oh, Levi, do. Rashi says, what means somebody scared? It means Rashi makes two explanations. Either somebody who's scared of war. That's the posh pshat. Or somebody who's scared that a yori ba'avirus should be yodo. He's scared of the avirus in his hand. And if you look at the dikduk of Rashi, it's not so brilliant. It should say a yori because he did avirus. What do you mean a yori me avirus should be yodo? So the Nachum Best has a beautiful point. He says he's making this person a huge fundamental mistake. Some people think that once they've done avirus, Hashem is not interested in them. So therefore, this person is scared because of the avirus in his hand. What should he do? He should realize that even if a person's done Aveirus, it doesn't make him in any way less loved by Hashem, and therefore he has no reason to be scared. But some do, the Yitzhak managed to convince that now that you've done Aveirus, you're further away from Hashem, and if you've got reason to be scared, then you can't go to battle, because the battle, the real battle is battling the Yitzhak. And if the Yitzhak managed to convince you that by doing Aveirus, you're one step away and you've lost already, then you'll never be able to fight the ultimate battle. It's very nice. Oh, that's his idea. Okay, getting back to less exciting things, but it's very nice spot. The person should realize it doesn't matter if you've done Aveirus, you know less precious. Whereas man, you might not have learned as much, you might have seen things that you shouldn't. So we have to do true for them all. But the fact is, Akshmoch still loves us just as much as he always does. We have to have Chesed with base Esvei. I'm going to be using quite a lot of the pictures today. I apologize for all the people mentioned we don't have it. And indeed, you go here, you've got 3 in here, 4 in here, but I've got one back. I know, we could do, if somebody can get, if you can get hold of those, Vado, come here we've got a few copies. Or maybe, can you do that? If you want, maybe Tolly's offering.
Why don't you just take a photo of them now?
Thousands of photos. Okay, we'll get to
We don't do more than 8.
No, today we're doing quite a few. Today we're doing quite a few. Okay. Let's summarize, because we're always stopping now, not by the end of the sugis necessarily, but the end of the daf. So today we're discussing somebody who, for whatever reason, what's the halacha? He's got a movi. What should he do? He should put the beam at the end of the movi. This, call him Oiber Chacham, what does he do? He puts the beam after the movi. And we described a very simple way. If you want to say which picture it is, if you don't mind, I'll say which picture it is, and then everybody can see. It is number... Pay base, thank you. Pay base. So what you've done is you put out 2 sticks, and then you put out the pegs, and then you hang the key on there. Now, does anybody remember what did Rava Paskin all night last night? You dreamt about it.
If it's
Oh, that's what the word says originally. What did Rava Paskin?
If you're going to go on, if you hold, you're not.
I'm afraid not. Rava says it's always no good. So picture pay base, which Tolly has now uploaded, I think. According to Rava, is no good. You cannot use it as your beam, right? So did you hear this, Shra? It's an interesting halacha. You can't use a movi if the person wants to put out brackets and put the movi on top of the
What happens if he has a brick? The brick comes out.
Also no good. Also no good.
Not on the actual wall.
Oh, very good. Not on the actual wall. It's very chiddush, no?
Yeah.
Oh, you've got it now on your thing?
Okay.
Oh, very good. Very good. Now we're up to the bottom line of Chesed with base. There's a complicated questions. So we want to try and disprove Rava, right? Esvei of Ada Master Rava. Hoisa Kiroso, top of decimal daled. Person has a beam, Meshucha or Tluya. It has it either Meshucha or Tluya. Pochis Mishloisha, less than 3 tvachim, Ein Tzorech Lavi Kara Acheres. We'll describe in a minute what Meshucha and what Tluya mean. But we're going to, before we mention either of these, we're going to remember one very important point. Lovud. How far is Lovud? Anybody know how far is Lovud? 3 tvachim. Does everybody agree with that? No, Shum Gamliel says it's 4 Tvachim. I'm going to have him a number of times today. So let's remember, Lavud normally, we're also used to Lavud being 3 Tvachim. It's quite a chiddush. Shum Gamliel says Lavud is 4 Tvachim, right? So the Brisa says, if it was Meshucha or Tluya, either Meshucha or Tluya, we'll explain into what they are, then if it's less than 3 Tvachim, it's okay. More than 3 Tvachim, no good. Shum Gamliel argues, instead of 3, he says 4, because he argues that Lavud is 4. So again, you've got a Brisa that tells us Meshucha or Tluya less than 3 is okay. Shum Gamliel says less than 4. Now what is Meshucha and Tluya? As you've all pointed out, the Havamin of the Gemara, actually, the Havamin of the Gemara was that Meshucha is when it's not on the walls. It's actually not a picture. It's none of the pictures. But Meshucha is when it's past the walls of the Mavui. You've got a Mavui, you've got the walls of the Mavui, and somebody goes and puts it past the walls, like on pegs. So if it's less than 3 Tvachim, okay. More than 4 Tvachim, more than 3 Tvachim, it's no good. That's Meshucha. And what is Tluya? Tluya is picture number Pei Dalet. What happens is, it's not hanging on any of the walls. A person, instead of putting the beam on the walls, he couldn't find the beam long enough. So he put a stick in the ground and he hung it where it's not actually touching. So if that's pshat in the Brisa, the Meshucha means past the walls a little bit. Meshucha means pulled away, right? Moshoich, to pull. Tluya means hanging. So does this Brisa hold like Rav? Is this Brisa compatible with Rav or not? What would you say?
Okay, no.
Absolutely not, as you say. Why? Rav said that even if it is at the very end, that means even if it's adjacent to the wall, it's a no good. If you look at picture per base, it's actually adjacent to the wall. And after Rav came along and told us that it's no good. Here,
So why did Rav hold up then?
oh, we'll come to it. Rav holds it has to be on the wall, otherwise it's not considered the heck, it's not considered a proper mechitza there. But we see from this Brisa clearly not. The Brisa says as long as it's within 3 Tvachim or within 4 Tvachim, it's okay. So therefore we see clearly that this Brisa does not work with Rava. It's a Raya not like Rava. The Gemara gives 2 different answers. Answer number 1. Look, Meshucha and Tluya are not describing the beam being outside the Mavui. They are describing the beam being on the Mavui, on the wall of the Mavui, not past the wall, but on the Mavui. So what is Meshucha and Tluya? No. Meshucha Meruach Achas. Meshucha is picture Pei Gimel, where it's hanging on one wall, and Tluya is picture Pei Dalet, which do Mishnei Ruchos. That means Meshucha is when it's hanging on one wall, Tluya when it's not hanging on either wall. So therefore, that's the chiddush of the Brisa. We understood Meshucha means past the wall, Tluya means not hanging on any wall. Comes down the Gemara says no, Meshucha means it's hanging on one wall, Tluya means it's hanging on 2 walls. Now what's the obvious question? Very good. If we see that hanging on one wall is okay, so obviously it does not need to be on the wall. So if that's the case, why do you need to then continue to tell me that if it's not hanging on either wall, Bishleima, the way we understood originally, then Meshucha means it's past the wall, and Tluya means that it's hanging without touching the walls. So then you've got 2 different chidushim. One is when it's past the walls, and one when it's not touching the walls. But now that you're saying that Meshucha and Tluya both mean not touching the walls, Meshucha just means it's not touching one wall, Tluya means it's not touching either wall. So what's the chiddush? If it doesn't need to touch one wall, then obviously it doesn't need to touch the wall. If it doesn't need to touch the wall, it doesn't make a difference if it's not touching one wall or 2 walls. Just say Tluya, not say Meshucha. So that, the Rashba asks, is a good question. And he says, because if it only, Shavuot Chaim, he says, if you only say Tluya, it's a typical Vision kind of answer, if I may say so. If it only say Tluya, you would translate the word Tluya as being hanging off one wall. By saying Meshucha and Tluya, you understand that one means hanging off one wall, and Tluya means hanging off 2 walls. That means not touching either wall. Again, you're right, it's a good question. I don't confuse the issue. I just get back. Robert came along and said, if you put a beam and it's adjacent to the wall, possible. Comes along the Brisa and says Meshucha and Tluya, okay, as long as it's within 3 Tvachim. Clearly not like Rava. The Gemara's first teretz says that Meshucha means it's hanging off one wall, Tluya off 2 walls, and the Gemara's obvious question is, like Moshe points out, that why did the Brisa tell me both cases? And the Gemara answers. You might have thought if it's not touching one wall, we'll say loved, but not touching two walls. I'm going to say loved twice. Kamash Malon, you say loved twice. So that's the chiddush of the Brisa. Chiddush number one is you can say loved on one wall. Chiddush number two is you say loved on two walls, and that's if you see his picture Peidalet, where you've got a beam which is not touching either wall. It's floating in the air or being stuck in a stick in the ground, and that's how it's hanging up. That's one answer. Rashi Omar says not kasha Rava. Rava was talking about where it's past the walls. This is not past the walls. Here it is a parallel to the walls. It's just not on the walls. It's on. It's between the walls. It's not past the walls. Rava held that once it goes. That's right. That's right. Rava holds that when it's past the walls, people don't see it. Since they don't see it, therefore people are not interested. They don't notice it. Rava will agree to this. It says Rashi Omar Meshucha v'Tluya. It's all one case. We're talking about a case where it's Meshucha and Tluya, where you've got a picture like a reish, brackets like a reish, where it's over here in Pei Hey. They're not got it as a reish. Rashi describes it more like a reish. But basically, you've got two brackets. So all of you are sure that building at some stage. You've got a bracket that goes like this and then like that. So the beam is both. It's both not touching the wall, and it's higher than the wall. So therefore, you've got two problems with this beam. It's higher than the wall, and it's not touching the wall, because it is 3 tvachim in and 3 tvachim high. Now, it's not a cash against Rava. Why is it not a cash against Rava? Why is it not a cash against Rava? If we say that that's okay. Because because it's within the wall. Rava was talking about where it's past the wall, right? Here's the entrance of the marble. You go and put the beam afterwards. Here we're talking about where it's within between the two walls. It's just a bit higher and not connected to both walls. Says the Gemara, Rashi Omar Meshucha v'Tluya Beichi Dami. You take two crooked brackets on the two walls. They're not 3 tvachim high. They're not 3 tvachim bent. You might have thought lovud means that if it's not touching the wall, it's okay within 3 tvachim. Chavut, what's chavut mean? Chavut means it's dropped down. We say it in Chasukah. Chavut means that it's something is dropped down. So you say over here, you're going to have to rely on two things. The beam is 3 tvachim higher than the wall. Chavut. It's 3 tvachim away from the wall. Lovud. But do you say both? Kamash or not? Then you say both together. There's a very, very big chumrah, the Bach and the Taz, Sukkah, huge chumrah to keep. It's not always so easy. That all the heterim of Sukkah kimat, which we talk about lovod, dofna kumo, and all these things, they don't work together. You can have one or the other, not both. I remember I was once in somebody's Sukkah, and the Rav came in, the Chashva Rav. He said to me, the Sukkah is possible. It wasn't my Sukkah, luckily. Why is the Sukkah possible? I was very scared. He said like this, it's a built-in sukkah. Lots of people nowadays have built-in sukkah. Now, when you have built-in sukkah, 90% of built-in sukkahs, around the sukkah, kosher part, there's concrete, there's cement. So how do the walls touch the schach? Do it for the akuma. But the problem was, the schach is usually you have like a wind, like a, what would you call it, a gap, and you put schach across. The schach didn't actually touch the wall of the cement. There was a tiny gap, less than 2 centimeters, between the ceiling and where the schach was. Now, less than 2 centimeters. It does, but if you look carefully, you put the schach down. I don't know if you got those in sukkah. Even without the wooden beams, the person hadn't bothered. That's right. He hadn't bothered to push. No, not in line. It wasn't higher. He didn't push the schach to the edge. He didn't push the schach to the edge.
There's a
tiny space, less than 2 centimeters.
Not height-wise, width-wise.
Loved plus Sefna Kuma. Says the Rav, loved plus Sefna Kuma doesn't work. You knew this before?
No.
It was like.
Why does it have to be touched? Why can't the Sefna Kuma come all the way to the
Because Sefna Kuma only works when there's actual cement. Air doesn't work as Sefna Kuma. Did you hear what I said? Air doesn't work as Sefna Kuma. Very important. Allah, just remember this. Write it down across the kitchen walls. Air doesn't work as Sefna Kuma. So again, it's mamish kimat. You would never notice it's possible. You never. I didn't agree. Okay, it's hard to know. Again, you got normal sukkah. What? He rolled out the schach. He had a mat. Can you hear? He had a mat.
Yeah.
The mat was, let's say, 6 foot, and the wall was 6'2". So you put the mat across. That means the gap was 6'2". Sometimes you build a building sukkah. It doesn't always fit exactly to the mat. So between the end of the mat and the end of the Dufan Akuma was maybe a centimeter, maybe 2 centimeters. This kind of gap, which nobody would even notice. The problem is Dufan Akuma doesn't work through air. The only way it works is through concrete. It has to have a wall. So the answer is less than 3 tvachim. We don't care because of Lovod. But we don't. But Dufan Akuma, no. They might say there are many reasons to be making. But if you want to be really machmir, I'll give you reasons.
So what should you fill it in? More stuff.
Yeah, fill it in with more schach.
Can you combine?
Yeah, you can combine schach. Okay. So the more over here teaches us the Gabe Eiruvin. Do we say Chavoit and Lovod together? What would you say? Do you say the Gabe Eiruvin? No, that's not a problem because you're not combining them together. You're using different Akum on one side and Lovod on the different side. That's okay. Now, can you use Chavoit and Lovod together, the Gabe Eiruvin? What would you say?
I'd say no.
Just to be safe. But you're wrong. No, the Gemara just now said we're talking about the brackets, the 3 tvachim up, 3 tvachim along. So the beam is not touching the walls, and we're relying on Lovod, and the beam is too high from the wall. Look at the picture again. Look at the picture. Picture, pay hey. That beam has got 2 problems with it. Problem number 1, it's too high. Answer to that, Chavoit. Drop down. Problem number 2, if it would drop down, I don't know if you can see it's the one on the picture, it wouldn't touch either wall because it's narrower than the wall. The answer is
the paddock's not part of the beam.
no. That's a good question. Why not? Either because they're less than the tefach or other reasons. They don't work. Very good. Yeah, it's Chavoit. No, it has different principles. Yes, Chavoit is you lower it. Gudachis is a wall. Chavoit Gudachis only works for the wall. Gudachis has to have a yes.
What is the actual point of this beam to make it so recognized?
Right. So we've got machlokes. We've had this a few times. One of 2 options. Either it's a hecker that people should recognize as a movui, or it's actual wall. It's considered a real wall. This beam.
Yeah, it's definitely recognizable.
How do you it's recognizable? The halachas of what's recognizable or not is very strange. But Rava tells us, for example, that if the beam is adjacent to the movui, it's not recognizable. Okay, let's get to it. Between the lechis, betachas kayo, and underneath the beam, nidin kekam, is not allowed to carry them. Again, in between the posts, underneath the beam, you're not allowed to carry. Omalei, puktoni levot. Go and teach this outside, meaning that Yehuda didn't agree. And the Yehuda held, you are allowed to carry. Right? It's a polite way to say that you don't agree with somebody. Say this normal case of mavoi, you're not allowed to carry according to a bzakai, according to a Yehuda, you are allowed to carry. Omalei, we start most of the Yehuda tachas. I understand, I agree with Yehuda doesn't make sense underneath the beam that you're allowed to carry. Bein lechin, you're not allowed to carry. You're allowed to carry even so if you want to see the picture, no pictures. Okay. There's no pictures, but my say it's very obvious. You've got a beam, you've got posts, you're not allowed to carry according to again, you've got 3 opinions that comes out. According to the Bais, which of Zakai quoted, you're not allowed to carry not between the posts and not underneath the beam. Rava holds you're allowed to carry underneath the beam and between the posts. Abaya makes a difference. When it comes to underneath the beam, you're not allowed, according to Abaya, underneath the beam, you are allowed to carry. Between the posts, you're not allowed to carry. If you remember, we discussed it very briefly yesterday, what would the difference be between the beam and the post? That Tosis tells us that posts can be the minimum shear. So people don't see them so well, so we're more machmir. But a beam, it has to be a tefach, so we're more makel. We know I mean a lot. I'll prove it to you. Where do I know it from? We had this in the Shabbos. You've got an area which is not Rishus Rabbim, not Rishus Yachid. If you remember, there are 4 Rishuyas to Shabbos. There's Rishus Rabbim, there's Rishus Yochid, there's Karmelis and Mokim Petur. Rishus Rabbim is a real Rishus Rabbim, like a motorway. Rishus Yochid is any private domain. A Karmelis is places which Chazal forbade. And a Mokim Petur is a non-specific area which Chazal decided that it is so insignificant they're not going to make it Osir B'D'Rabbanan. Do you remember the parameters? Does anybody? It's very hard to remember. It has to be less than 4 by 4 in size, and it has to be higher than 3 and less than 10, or even actually more than 10. So, okay. So an area, for example, a post box, we said, could easily be a mokim patur. So if you've got a post box, what? A bollard could be a mokim patur. So if you've got a bollard between your front garden and the Rishus Rabbim, You're allowed to put your stuff down from your front garden onto it, even though you can't push the motor. And you'd be allowed to carry from Shusavim, assuming that your house runs onto Shusavim, which is where you'd be allowed to carry from Shusavim onto the bollard as well. You're not allowed to, midrabanon, carry from your house, put it on the bollard, and carry from the bollard and take it into the Shusavim. Why not? What's the issa? Both times you did it for Mokim Petul. The Torah says, Chazal v'choshesh, that if you come to do that, what would you end up doing? You'll carry straight. So therefore they forbade it. Says it again, let's see go over. The they're allowed to shoulder on, means put the burden down. Says the Gemara, you see over here that these areas which are not normal areas are Mokim Petul, so you're allowed to carry, not like Abai. There it's 3 tvachim high. I'm talking about between the lechi where it's not high at all. So here you've got a nice picture and it's much easier to explain, but really I try to explain without picture. It's picture Pevov. What happens is, in English, you've got an entranceway. Not an entranceway, it's like you've got an opening. You've got thick walls which open up into the mavoi. So now, what does a mavoi need to make it mutter? What does a mavoi need to make it mutter? A lechi, a post. So somebody will come along and say to me, that is the best post in the world. Why would they need a post? Oh, you already joked, very good. But let's explain the question first of all. Why would you need a post? You've got billion posts. Look at these. This picture has actually got a post already added onto the picture in Payvolve. Imagine they wouldn't have a post. Somebody could argue with you and say, I don't need any posts in this place. I couldn't think of a good English word to describe this entranceway. It's not a narrowed entranceway. What? No, it's not a driveway, because a driveway doesn't usually have walls coming in. This is something where you've got the walls coming in. And the walls coming in, it's not an entranceway, because the entranceway always has a doorpost as well. It is it's not post, because if it's post, that's a proper lechi. I couldn't get the right English word. It is a gateway. It's an entranceway where the entranceway itself has a wall. Entranceway side post. Right, okay. So, right. A buttress. Oh, that's not a bad word. Something like that. So the halacha is that you need to put a lechi. Why do you have to put a lechi, like you said? Because people don't see it as a lechi. People see it as a wall. Now, so the question is... What? Oh, but we'll discuss that in a second. But...
We had it earlier on.
Right.
When the wall comes out 4 hours and you have a new lechi, because they didn't come to do it.
So you see, says the Gemara, says Abaya, that even between posts, you're not allowed to carry unless you have another lechi. Like me, says Abaya, not allowed to carry between the posts. To always go 4x4. Even if there's a less than 4x4, how can it be? Look at that picture again. I'm sorry to look at the picture. That area of the walls, so it's quite wide, but how deep is it? Even if it's less than 4x4 tefachim, even if that space between the two is less than 4x4, you still need another lechi to be matter it. So Gemara says, is a right, you're not allowed to carry. Omar, Rava, Hasam de Pasuach the Kalmis. A very interesting chiddush says Rava. When the mob is open to a Kalmis, which is a mokim, which is only asked to be banon, then you're not allowed to carry in the entranceway. When it's open to a shusarabim, you're allowed to carry. Says the Gemara, this is an expression. It's not a. Yitziva be'aro v'giyur b'shmei. Yitziva means a resident. Giyura means like a ger, a stranger. Now, normally, who gets more covered? A person who's a resident, a full-time resident, or somebody who's a stranger? A resident. Yetziva, the resident, be'ara, you put him down to the floor. Be'giyura and the ger, b'shmei shemai, you put him in the heavens. You never do such a thing. You don't put the somebody who's out of town in the heavens and the person thing in the floor. Says the Gemara, according to Rava, if this entranceway opens up into a shusarabim, you're allowed to carry an entranceway. If it's open, if it's a kamlis, you're not allowed to. What's the logic? A kamlis is asked for abundance, shusarabim is asked for natayah. And says, well, no, there is a logic. And yes, indeed. When something finds something similar to it, it awakens its own power. Therefore, when you've got an entranceway, we're discussing now like this, that picture you've got in your mind of the buttress, the wall, whatever you want to call it. You've got a gate, you've got a driveway, let's call it. But the driveway has walls coming in, and they stop and leave a gap between the walls of that driveway. What's the halacha? According to Abai, you're not allowed to carry. According to Rabbi, you're allowed to carry. Says Rabbi, when did I say you're allowed to carry? Only if it opens up to Shusarabi. If it opens up to Kamel, it's not. Says, well, what's the logic of that? Shusarabi is device, Kamel is Rabbanon. By Kamel, we should be more maker. You won't know. By Kamel, since the Kamel is Rabbanon, and between the entrance is Rabbanon, therefore they both match up, and we forbid you for both. But when one's a Shusarabim, everybody can differentiate easily between the Shusarabim and the area between the entranceway. And therefore, we allow you to carry in the entranceway. Now, another kasha on Rava. What was Rava's chiddush? Rava's chiddush is allowed to carry between the lechin. He tries to argue that. Va'atlei tisva do not agree to be lechin osa, that between the lechin is osa. Omar Rava Barachana, Omar Bichnon, Movu Shrotzvi belechin, Pochis Ba'amas, Bonu Nemachleikas of Shemil Rabban. Pochis Ba'awat Fochim, Bonu Nemachleikas of Shemil Rabban. This is the only time I remember. I don't remember anywhere else in Shas, but we have a picture. There are other places, Bobby. A picture in the actual Gemara. They made a picture in the Gemara. If you look, there's a picture in the Gemara. Rashi in the Gemara, in the Rashi many times, but in the Gemara, I don't know. So here it's a very rudimentary picture. But if you want to look at a more exciting picture, it's picture number Pezai. I explain the picture briefly. A person, instead of making one lechi, went and made a whole series of lechis. He wanted you to have more shilas to think about when you came back from holiday. So, anyways, the kid, he makes a series of lechin, one after the next. Now, Rav Shimon Gamliel holds that lavud is how much? What's Rav Shimon Gamliel hold? Lavud is what? 4 tvachim. Chachamim hold lavud is 3 tvachim. So over here, he went and he made a lavud of 3.5 tvachim between. There's a picture in the Gemara. Oh, very good. Where is it? Sukkah Daf Dalet. There's a picture in Daf Sukkah, so I'm not the only place. But, okay. So a person makes a series of lechim, and each lechi is less than 4, but more than 3 tvachim apart. Again, let's be very, very clear. Less than 4 tvachim, but more than 3. According to the Chalid, there's no lavud. Which lechi is the most important? The furthest out. According to Shimon Gamliel, that we say lavud, because he holds lavud up to 4 tvachim. What happens? What do we say? Very good. Oh, got the whole thing. It's all one big lechi. So you've got a lechi which is like about 5 amas long if you've got loads of them. Can you imagine such a thing? You've got loads. Now the halacha is that you're only allowed to carry up to the lechi. So according to the Chachamim, that you look at the last one as being the right lechi, because we said it's 3.5 tvachim gap. You can carry much more.
You mean the first coming in?
You might carry much more, all the way to the end of the mobi.
You mean to the front?
Yeah, to the front. To the entrance, you're allowed to carry. According to Shimon Gamliel, you're allowed to carry all the way to the entrance, because the last lechi. According to Shimon Gamliel, that we say lavud, so they're all considered to be one lechi. And if you're only allowed to carry to the first lechi, can you imagine by adding lechi, first from the inside? That means the furthest in, not the furthest out.
If it goes all the way across, you can't carry anywhere.
Very good. Now, what can you redact? Somebody would ask you now, are you allowed to carry between the lechis? What would you say from this whole discussion?
No.
Oh, because if you're allowed to carry between the lechins, there's no bachik. It's muchach and not like Rava. Rava says you're allowed to carry between the lechins. Says, well, of course not. You're not allowed to. Why? Because if you're allowed to, yes, it's clear. You won't have a machloikas. The whole machloikas is dependent on the fact that you're not allowed to carry between the lechins. If you're allowed to carry between the lechins, there's absolutely no machloikas. The answer is there must be, you're not allowed to carry between the lechins. You're only allowed to carry up to the first lechi. Now, according to the Chachamim, the first lechi is the last lechi, the furthest to the road. Because at the end of the day, each lechi is separate, because 3.5 tvachim gap between the shads. According to Shimon Gamliel, we say lavud. So if you're only allowed to come to the first, but he's clearly not like Rava. Again, So the Gemara says, now we're up to now Rishon Gamliel, which is about 7 lines at the bottom, just before the picture. You're only allowed to go up to the first inner lechi. If you remember, Rava agreed that when a Movi opens up to a Karmelis, we forbid it. Does anybody remember why? Two D'Rabbanans, and they don't differentiate. Now the Gemara for some reason forgot it already. It was more questions, the whole question again. The resident you're going to put on the floor and the gate you're going to put in the heavens. That's not right. And so, and yes, he woke him up, and that means the two similar Rishuyos had an effect on each other in the both, and therefore, again, we're discussing where it opens up a Kalmanis, and that's why Rava agrees between the Lechi is also. You're only allowed to carry up to the Lechi. According to Rishon Gamliel that we say Lavud, you're only allowed to carry up to the very first Lechi. According to the Chomim, you're allowed to carry up to the very last Lechi. Rashi wants to answer Rava, the question on Rava, and at the same time explain the Machlokes Rishon Gamliel and Rabbanon. So he says like Rashi Omar. This person didn't just make 5 or 6 lechem. He did loads of lechem. How many? He did enough that they go across 4 amos. Now 4 amos is the entire length of a mobi. That's because 4 amos is considered the length of a mobi. So he did one post, another post, each time 3.5 tefachim gap. Which according to the Chachamim, what's the halacha 3.5 tefachim gap? We don't say love. According to Gamliel, we do say love. And he did it to the depth of 4 amos. So therefore, according to Gamliel, what have you just done? You've built a whole new wall. Because he considers it lovud. So it's like you decided to build an extra wall to your mavui. So then, yes, so therefore what you're going to have to do, you're going to have to build another entire new lechi. Now, is this a kasha on Mova? No, it's not a kasha on Mova anymore. The emes is, says Ravashi, that indeed you're allowed to carry between the lechi. You're allowed to carry between the lechis. Oh, if you're allowed to carry between the lechis, so why according to Rishon Gamliel, you need a new lechi? Why do you need a new lechi according to Rishon Gamliel? If you're allowed to carry between the lechis, so the fact that you put them in, it doesn't matter. Yes, it does. Because over here we talk about a case. Well, you didn't just do it for a few amas. You did it for 4 amas. Since you did it for 4 amas, it's considered a whole new wall, a whole new reshus. A whole new reshus, you got to have a new lechi. So therefore, from here, you've got no right against Rava that says you're not allowed to carry between the lechi. Really, you are allowed to carry between the lechi. The problem with Rishon Gamliel is that because of Rava, it's considered 4 amas consecutive wall. A 4 amas consecutive wall needs another lechi. Now, we're going to discuss at great length a new topic which has a lot to do. I mean, let's just look at the pictures if you don't mind. Can you mind putting it on Zoom? In picture, Sadi and Sadi base. Sadi and Sadi base. If you don't mind to look at Sadi and Sadi base and to examine them. Let's just talk about what you would say from logic. Sadi and Sadi base. Is it applying? Is it uploaded? Right. If you look at picture Sadi, if you don't mind, picture Sadi, a person put a post, but he did it beautifully fitting. He was a good constructor. Must be somebody Levi. Who would you recommend? Flush. Oh, flush, that's a good word. He did it flush. Somebody standing in the road, would he say that there's a lechi there? No, he would say there's no lechi. He would just say that the wall continues. Somebody standing inside the mavui will see it. Look at picture Sadiq base. If somebody's standing inside the mavui, he'll say to you, there's no lechi, because he will just see a continued wall. Somebody standing outside will say, yes, there is.
Would you not say?
No, we discussed this already on Shabbos. I'm going to argue again and again. Let's just finish with what Tony said. Somebody standing outside, can he see a post? Yes, he can, because he sees the wall is not straight. He'll see. Now you're saying an halacha. I'm just telling you a story first. Oh, you're also arguing halacha like you're chaim. I'm discussing first the story. Let's discuss the story first. The first cone is called Niru B'Bifnim V'Shovim B'Chutz. On the inside you can see it, outside you can't. On the second one, you can see it on the outside, you can't see it on the inside. If you don't want just a little bit, Tzadi Gimel and Tzadi Dalet, can you upload it? You can actually have it not with a lechi, not with a post. You can have it with somebody who built a wall but didn't do it flush, as somebody said. Somebody did a very bad constructed wall. Not very bad. No, it's better, it's better, it's better. Tell me when it's uploaded, Chaim. When you can see it. Tzadi Gimel and Tzadi Dalet. But Tzadi Gimel is somebody built a wall, if you can see it, somebody built a wall, and what he did was, he built it, and then he extended outward a little bit. Can people see it? So then what happens is, again, from the inside, people will not see a post. Why? People from the inside will just see the wall continue. If you're standing inside the mob, you see the wall continue. But if you're standing outside, you will see. If you look...
They're installing the
Tzadi Gimel now.
Tzadi Gimel, Tzadi Gimel.
When he built actual building.
There's Lechi then from Tzadi Gimel.
The lechi is that what happened was you can see, you can see as you go in further. That means the wall going in. That's right. That is the lechi. Or, and you look at Tzadi Dalet, you can see it on the inside, not on the outside. Okay, we'll come to it more and more. Again, let's just discuss a little bit. You've got a movie with a lechi. The lechi can sometimes be only seen on the outside, sometimes can only be seen on the inside, sometimes it can be seen by both. The Gemara explained, according to Rav Ashi, that this person, the Oiber Chacham, went and made loads of lechis for 4 amas. And now it comes over Shimon Gamliel and says, I hold of Lovut, so you've created a new wall, so therefore now you need another lechi. Fade the Gemara, now side point. Then the Gemara goes into it more. It is true that all these lechis, because they're adjacent to each other, they're considered like a wall. But somebody standing on the outside will see that there's a lechi. And therefore for him, he'll consider it as a proper lechi. So the Gemara says, that he holds that's not a lechi. A lechi has to be seen from the inside as well. And from the inside, it cannot be seen. Now, it is interesting over here a little bit, because from the inside, it can't be seen with the eyes, because there's loads of lechis. If you remember, we showed a picture of a few lechis with us next. But because of Lovud, it's considered as if they're all one thick wall. So therefore, it doesn't look like a lechi. So therefore, it's not considered a lechi. Why is it not considered a lechi? When you've got a number of lechis that are going along the wall, and each one's less than 4 tefachim, he considers it halachically speaking as one wall. Since halachically speaking is one wall, so therefore you've got no lechi. That's right. We don't care about what the eye sees. It's the halachic eye doesn't see a lechi. Right. Now we're getting into the juice of it. If you can see the lechi on the inside, but not on the outside. That's a good lechi. From the inside you can't see it. So now we have a machlokas. It is a good lechi. It's not a good lechi. Like Chaim wants to say, like Moshe wants to say, it's not a good lechi. Why is it not a good lechi? Because on the inside you can't see it. Let's prove that Rechia says it's a good lechi. This is now going to the pictures of the wall that was built crooked. And it was built crooked, and because it was built crooked, you've got a post. But sometimes it's built crooked where you can only see the post on the outside. Sometimes it's built crooked that you can only see it on the inside. So it's a good lechi. So you can see that it doesn't matter if you can't see it on the inside. As long as you can see it on the outside, that's a lechi. This time, did you not know of this price? How Yehuda won't argue the prices, and Amoya don't argue the prices. Everybody must have heard. No, so again, we went in Germany, heard the prices. We didn't agree with it. So he says, if you're saying that the rider of here holds like this is simply because he knew the price, Rabbi Yehuda also knew the price, but Rabbi Yehuda chose to ignore it. So maybe Rabbi Yehuda also chose to ignore it. The fact that he quoted it, is that a proof? So he says, yes. Hi, Matt. He never taught it. Why did he teach it? So again, let's get it clear. The Gemara says we have a machlokas and moiroim regarding a lechi which can only be seen on the outside. We discussed this once before, discussed on Shabbos. We'll discuss it again, and this is something which disturbs people. Is imagine I'm going to go back to the story for 1 minute. Or me and Tolly's garden. We discussed it on Shabbos. Imagine I have a garden back to back with Tolly. That's the discussion we had. Imagine both our gardens are 10 meters wide. Now, if there's a wall between, we're both allowed to carry. Why? The wall falls in. Am I allowed to carry? No. Why am I not allowed to carry? Because even though it's my garden, even though that's his garden, the halacha is poles b'mloyo l'mokim ma'osa. Poles b'mloyo l'mokim ma'osa is considered osa. That means when an area is completely open to an area which is forbidden to carry into, you're not even allowed to carry in the first area. That was the simple halacha. We discussed what happens if my garden is only 2 meters wide and his is 10 meters wide, and the fence breaks down just by the 2 meter panel. So it's clearly that he would be allowed to carry in his garden. Why? Because he's got a fence. 80% of the garden is fenced. It's just the last middle 2 meters. The question is, am I allowed to carry in my garden? What would you say? What would you say? No, that's how he's saying that. My garden is 2 meters wide, and it goes all the way back to his garden. The wall between my garden and his garden fell in. It's gone. There's no wall now. So, but now, if you were to stand in his garden, so 80% of it is fenced. You should all shout to me and say it's a machloikas. If you hold nirei b'chutz, that scene on the outside is a good lechi. So you could say it's a good wall. So therefore, I'm allowed to carry my garden as well. If you say you need it for the people on the inside, I'm in my garden, can't see any wall at all. My garden is completely. Can you picture it? Can you write? Oh, it doesn't. You're right. I was using it as an example, but I just want to get the picture clear. So this is the machlokas we had just now. You've got a mavoi, which has got a lechi. It can't be seen on the inside. It can only be seen on the outside. Like that picture. I forgot what the picture was. Picture Pitzadik base, where you can't see anything on the inside, but on the outside you can see a very nice lechi. That's the machlokas. So it says like this. He holds that it is a lechi. It is a lechi. And actually, if you want to know, that's how we pass. It is a lechi, not like you, Moshe, not like you, Chaim. Very sorry to tell you that even though on the inside it doesn't look like a lechi, since on the outside it looks like a lechi, it is a lechi. Says the Gemara, even though I held like this, I managed to find a kasha against my own opinion. Imagine, it's a very honest kasha in his own opinion. We're talking about not a private garden, we're talking about a public chotzer. Let's say 3-4 houses in one chotzer, 3-4 houses in the next chotzer. And in that shape, the T shape which I was describing earlier, and if you look at it, it is picture Sadik Ches, and if you can upload it, it's a very simple picture. You've got a chotzer, you've got a courtyard which houses 3 houses, and another courtyard which houses another 3 houses. But it opens up from a big to a small one, and the wall between fell in. If you can see it, tell me when it's up. Sadik Ches. So can you see, there would have been a wall, there should have been a wall between the Chotzer K'tan and the Chotzer G'dol. There should be a wall there. And if there would be a wall, everyone would be able to carry in their own Chotzer. But the wall between the 2 Chatzeros went and fell in. Can you imagine? Fell in. So now what would you say? What would you pass them? What would you pass them? There's nothing left. What would you say? Very good. In the big chotzer you can carry. In the small chotzer, well, it depends. Says the Gemara. Why? Says Rabba, very good, just like you just said. If it's true that a lechi which is with bachutz is a good lechi, so let the other one be mutter as well. In the end of the day, the little one should also be mutter. Says Rabba, according to me, which is how we pass. That a lechi which can be seen on the outside is good lechi. Why can't you carry in the small chotzer? In the end of the day, those who are standing in the big chotzer, they can see a wall. They can see a very, very good wall. The fact that it's part of it is missing doesn't matter. So why says Rabbi, according to my own opinion, that near with the chutz is not? So Rabbi, that's the question. So what? Oh, yeah, that's a good question. Why should it work? The answer is, people know about the fence. People know about it. And if it reminds them that this is us and this is mutter, it reminds. Yeah. People know what other people's garters are. You're asking a good point. I can't argue with you. I can only say what they say, the logic which they say. Okay, says the Gemara. It's a very, very good question on Rabbah. It's an unbelievable question on Rabbah. How can you say not allowed to carry the Chotzer Ketana when you say that Niru V'Achutz V'Shav B'Fnim is okay? Answers the Gemara. We're talking about where the wall fell in, and then there was another wall going in. This picture static test, if you can upload it. Well, what happens is the smaller one has walls continuing into the big one and carrying on. By carrying on, what happens is they could. If you look at the picture static test, tell me what itself. Stop. What happens is the ketana, the small chotzer, goes and has walls, which can you see it, Levi? It goes in. Because they go in, so that makes it look like there's no wall at all. People therefore ignore the other wall. Can you see they ignore the other wall? For the ketana. People standing in the ketana can't say that on the outside I can see a chotzer. Andrew, do you have the pictures up on you? Ben, do you have the pictures? Yeah, oh, you've got them. Very good. So therefore, by the walls going into the Gedolah, so that gets rid of the walls on the outside. It's like a continuation, and therefore you can't say when you're standing in the Gedolah, I've got walls. The Gemara over here says a very strange question. That if between the walls, if you look at picture study test very carefully, the walls are going into the Gedolah. Imagine that between the two walls, that's the outer wall of the Chotzer Gedolah and the inner wall of the Chotzer Gedolah, would be less than 3 Tvachim. Imagine there would be less than 3 Tvachim. Let's say there would be less than 3 Tvachim. The wall would be, that is considered like a blocked up cement. If it's considered blocked up cement, you're back to the earlier question that you've got a wall. If you look at the picture between the outer wall and the inner wall of the wall which goes in. That means, let's imagine that it's lovud. The arts could actually have a better picture in this particular context. But it doesn't matter, you can picture it in your mind. If you were to say lovud, meaning that from the outer wall to the inner wall, there's less than 3 tefachim. So therefore it's considered blocked up. If it's considered blocked up, back to the first question, which is that now you've got answers the more the obvious answer. What's the obvious answer? The obvious answer is that it's not 3 tefachim, it's 10 tefachim. Therefore, there's no lovud. We're talking about specifically where the smaller chotzer is 10 amos wide and the big chotzer is 11 amos wide. And since it's 11 amos wide, 11 amos, how much is an amma? How many tefachim in an amma? 6. Right, we're passing 6. 6 tefachim, and there's half and half on each side. So how much is on each side? 3. How much do we say lovud? 3. So therefore, if you say we're talking about with the inner one, the smaller one is 10 and the big one is 11, you do have lovud. If you do have lovud, it's considered blocked up. If you do have blocked up, so now you go back to the same question. It's a wall. Answers on one side you got 2 tefachim gap. On one side you got 4 tefachim gap. 4 tefachim there's no lovud, and therefore it's no good. So you've got lovud on one side. Answer maybe the Tanya, the top of your Damadalef, maybe Dama Brin and Shnei Passim, you need to have 2 panels. The Tanya Chotz the test pass Echot, maybe Shnei Passim. Rebbe holds you have to have 2 different panels. According to Rebbe, in order to have a kosher chotzer, you have to have a minimum of 2 panels. 1 panel is not enough. And therefore over here, you've only got 1 panel, because on one side it's 2 tefachim, which is lovud, but on the other side it's 4 tefachim. That's what we're going to get up to. We're going to start Hai Mai Hashem tomorrow. Sure. Yes, and I'm afraid to tell you that the next few lines of Gemara, it's very hard, very, very hard. What? Yes. Any questions? It's okay. Can you hear me clearly? Yeah, today the connection was better than usual, no? We should move into the basin. I find my voice. Oh.